Your church has to replace a third of its congregation every year. We're going to explain what we mean by that on today's episode and talk about this break-even dilemma that just about every church experiences. And you have likely felt this problem. We're going to add some numbers to the problem. Hopefully that will work over the radio or through our YouTube channel. Hopefully it will translate. I think it will. If not, well, we will fail you, listeners, and that's not what we want to do. So, Dad, let's hope we succeed on this one.
Oh, we're going to succeed. I got to tell you, I was doing a consultation in Florida, and the pastor came up to me and he was saying, we've got this issue where we have to replace so many. He said, I recently read an article. Oh, that was at Church Answers.
Yes.
So the word's out.
This is a newer approach that we have put out there of late. We put an article out there. I've done some speaking on it. Dad, you kind of took several different data points and put them all together in this particular dilemma that we're going to discuss. We'll get to more of that here in a moment, but we certainly want to thank our sponsor, Tyndale. They've just been an incredible partner of Church Answers. We love the New Living Translation. Their resources are top notch. The people that work there, hey, we just visited in Chicago, had a great time, met a lot of their people. They are just an amazing bunch of people. Sometimes when you think of a publisher, you think of a resource provider. I mean, there's actual people behind those resources, and at Tyndale, we can certainly vouch for them. Just a great, great group of people. They want to tell you about a new book. The Night is Normal. It's the latest book from Dr. Alicia Britt Cole. She was a former atheist, and she has since converted and come to know Jesus. And Alicia's raw faith and love for God's word hold the attention of the saints and skeptics alike. So in The Night is Normal, revered author, speaker, and mentor Dr. Alicia Britt Cole offers a groundbreaking perspective that reveals spiritual disillusionment as an unexpected friend. So whether you're disillusioned with God, yourself, or others, Alicia offers a practical and soulful group of tools to help you navigate the night and find your way to a livable and love-saturated hope. Again, that's The Night is Normal by Dr. Alicia Britt Cole.
And I know it's a great book, but I got to tell you, if there was a 60s song called The Night is Normal, it would be good.
There's probably not, because if there was, you would know it.
I know. There are a lot of songs with night in it, but I'm not going to go there. Let's go to what we want to talk about, Sam, which is this whole idea of replacing a third of your attendance to stay even each year. You start with the big picture of this, just the implications of this.
Yeah, the big picture of this is rather simple. Let's say that you have someone who, for whatever reason, leaves your church. They move away. Something happens. They're no longer at your church. And then for whatever reason, they come back like 5 or 6 years later. And inevitably, what you hear from them is, wow, I don't know anybody. I don't recognize anyone. All these people are new. And clearly there will be some people there who have been there all along. Your core often sticks around. But the church will feel new. It will feel like there are a bunch of new people there. And the reason is because there are a bunch of new people there. And what we have found, and just kind of piecing together some data points, some of our own data points, some government data, and kind of, I would call this a synthesis of several different things. What we found is just about every church loses roughly a third of the congregation every year. Add that up over several years. If you simply replace them, which hopefully you do, your attendance doesn't grow, but you've got a lot of new people and your church will feel new. And that's why that person who went away and comes back a few years later says, wow, this isn't the church that I knew 5, 6, 7 years ago.
And we have to be clear on this as we look at the 4 different components of who is leaving and why they are leaving. It's different for every church. These are averages, medians, representative samples. These are numbers that we can best say are typical for churches, But as we go through each of these numbers, you'll say, no, mine's a lot different than that. Okay. We'll go through and add up each of the 4 categories as we do this and find out what your numbers are. The fourth one may be a little difficult, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But we're going to look at 4 categories of where you lose people. One other thing to keep in mind, this is attendance, not membership. So we're looking at replacing attendance. That's what you see for those of your churches, most of them meeting on Sunday morning. That's what you're seeing. People there are not there. So you have to replace a third of your attendance every year just to stay even. Let's go to first one, death. Why is it, and by the way, this is per 100 people in attendance. Why is it one person, Sam?
Well, that's what roughly the death rate is in the United States. And I know for those who follow demographics, I know that the death rate is per 1,000 people. But just to kind of simplify and round, because it's kind of hard for like 0.85 of a person to die.
Mm.
I don't. Maybe that can happen spiritually. Physically, that's a bit odd. I don't know of any cases where half a person died, but yeah, if you round things up and you kind of just take a rough estimate from some of the data, that this is government data. If you are a church of 100, you will, if again, assuming you have a median age that is representative of the United States, you'll lose about one person per 100 every year to death. 1% of your congregation is going to die every year. That sounds very morbid now that it has come out of my mouth, but it's true. Now, if you have an older congregation, if you have a church, so the median age in the United States is 39 years old. If you say, well, we're average age is 60, or our median 70, well, this number is going to be a little higher, likely. And again, in any one year, it may be off, but you add it up over many years, and on average, most churches are going to lose one person to per 100 to death every year. So that's 1%. That accounts for 1% of the third, or the 32% that we're about to get to.
Before you go to the next one, let's do a little explanation on median. I know we use that number quite a bit. So you said that the median age of a person in the United States is what?
It depends on who's counting, but 38, 39, right in that range.
Okay, so that would mean your church in attendance, if you look out on a given Sunday, a typical Sunday, half of them would be under 39, half of them would be over 39 or 39 and over, whichever way you want to look at it. My guess is we have a lot of listeners who are saying, I wish my church was that young. I wish it
Yes.
was.
Yeah, and there's actually data on this, and I certainly don't want to confuse the issue, but I will anyway. A typical church member is right around 60. So most churches are much, much older than the national average, or the median in the United States. An average is what you grew up doing. You take all of them and then you divide by the number that is the count. Median is, all right, half are on one side and half are on another side. But yeah, the typical church member is about 60. The median age in the United States is roughly 39. I imagine that most churches probably lose more than 1% a year to death. But the smaller you are, the more that number can be skewed, obviously, because if you have 25 people, you may or may not lose anybody that year. But yeah, one person to death. That's what I would count. 1%. Roughly. Now, a little older, maybe 2%. But
And I know I'm
that
distracting us from getting to the other numbers, but let me share the other extreme. I'm a member of your church, West Bradenton. I'm a member of the church at Spring Hill in the Nashville area. The church at Spring Hill has existed for 7 years. Average attendance a little above 200. Number of funerals the pastor, his brother, my son has conducted in those 7 years is 0. So obviously it is a younger congregation. As a matter of fact, I am the second oldest person in the congregation. Every Sunday I come there, I say, thank God for Dan, because he is older. Just a little point there. Your brother has never done a funeral for a church member. He's done some for others outside the church, but not for a church member. Now you can go to number 2.
Yeah, I would just say that's unusual. I think most who are listening to this, that their experience would be much different than my brother.
Hmm.
But okay, so you're going to lose roughly a third. We're going to get to the number 32%. 32% of your congregation every year. We know that 1 to 2% is going to be to death. There is another statistic that's out there called mobility rate, and basically, without getting into all the science of this, because it would be very boring if I did, it may already be boring. I apologize. 9% of your church is going to move every year out of town. They're going to, you know, get a new job. They're going to retire someplace. Something's going to happen. They're going to move. So, you can count on roughly 9% moving. Now, here's the thing. If you have a younger congregation, that number's less. If you have an older congregation, that number's more.
And
That's
that's
counterintuitive.
counterintuitive. That is
Very
totally
counter,
counterintuitive.
very counterintuitive, but it's the baby boomers that have the money to move. The millennials don't move hardly at all because they don't have the money to move. So the lesson here, which we've said before, is if you attract the younger generation, believe it or not, your assimilation will be better. At least as it is, as of 2023, anything could change in the next 10 years. But as of today, the younger generation tends to stay put more than the older generation. And so this mobility, you would think, oh, we're an older congregation or have a bunch of baby boomers. This isn't going to affect us. Actually, it could affect you more. So we're at 10% right now. 9% of your church is going to move. 1% will pass away. This is the third one, 7% will transfer to another church.
And that
This is the
transfer,
great sheep swapping.
sheep shuffling, saint circulating. Sheep
There you go.
shuffling,
I like how you
saint
said that.
circulating. And these are the people who are jumping from church to church. I have a theory. I have never tested it, but I have a theory
Okay.
that once someone moves away from a church within 6 months, this is my theory, they are attending less than the church where they were. In other words,
Hmm.
their commitment is waning because they don't have all of the connections for accountability that they had in the former church. And I think that they're easing out. I don't have anything to base that on. That is only hypothetical. One of these days, I may find a way to test the hypothesis. But I have this idea. There's some anecdotes to it, Sam. I have seen people leave churches, and I know anecdotally that they kind of get connected to another church, but then they start fading even more. So it's anecdotal at best. I'd love to test that one day.
Yeah, it's a great theory to test. I would agree with you, because most people who are transferring to another church are doing so because they feel disenchanted in some way with their current church, and they're bringing that disenchantment, malaise, whatever word you want to use, into a new congregation. Now, obviously, you may have a good reason to leave a church, and we've talked about, hey, before. There are good reasons to leave a church. But let's just go out there and say that the vast majority of transfer growth that's happened over the last 50 years did not happen for good reasons.
Right?
Maybe your individual story is like, okay, we get it. That makes sense. But most, if not the vast majority of transfer growth has happened because of motives that aren't pure. So what's going to happen every year is you're going to have 7% that transfer away. I don't like that, but that's what happens. Now this is different. So moving is demographic growth, right? So if you move and you got people moving into your community and they're from a different city or a different state, that's not transfer growth. Transfer growth is from one church to the next in the same town, and
Right.
nobody moved. You've got the same house, you've got the same location, but you transferred to another church. And so I, I'll also say this: working through these numbers, you hopefully are receiving people through the opposite of these numbers. So the birth rate's roughly what, 2.1 in the United States. So hopefully, as people are passing, you've got babies being born. As people move away, you've got people moving in. And as people transfer out, they're transferring in as well. So you may think, well, our attendance isn't declining by a third every year. I hope not, and the reason for that is as people leave, so they come. And the point in all of this is, every roughly every 5 or 6 years, you're gonna have a new congregation. You'll have your core. You'll have roughly, I'd estimate, about a third that just never go anywhere. Maybe those third are, help your church to keep going forward. They're the core. You love them. Or maybe they're the third that's holding you back. I don't know. And you're hoping you get more new people. But you're probably going to have a third that stick. And then you're going to have this constant rotation of others around that core.
I got, I got,
So
I got another kind of outside of the box. Maybe let's talk about it in a minute. I call it the LTI.
sure, you just made that up.
I did, but it's good. It's really good.
Right.
Leading transfer indicator, category number 3. Leading transfer indicator is giving. So that's that. I think even though I'm speaking anecdotally, we could do database on that, and we could see significant patterns of giving declining before a person leaves, okay, or even stopping giving altogether. So this could be an exercise. Not that pastors and those who do the finances of churches have the time, but say, look at the giving of families. Financial secretary, don't tell me who or anything, but tell me how many have had their giving decrease 30% to 50%, 50% to 70%, 70% to 100%. Just, tell me those categories. I would tell you that you're probably looking at your FTI, your future transfer indicator, by looking at your LTI, your leading transfer indicator. Just another little Rainer data point out there.
We've got a lot of data in this episode. Hopefully, people have stuck around to hear about your FTI and your LTI.
Last category, Sam.
Yes, frequency. So you're going to lose about 15% of your congregation to attendance frequency issues. Now, these people don't leave the church. The first 3 categories, they're gone. They're not part of the congregation anymore. But for those that decline in attendance of frequency, they're going to account for roughly 15% of the decline in your attendance. So this is about 15 people per 100. They're going to be fading from the church. They're going to be becoming less active. Hopefully, again, you've got people who are fading into the church. And clearly, we're just talking numbers. We don't want anyone to die in your church. We want you to keep all your people. We want them to come as frequently as possible. So I just want to say that, we're just telling facts here. Hopefully we can all solve this problem together. But yeah, you're going to lose about 15% of your congregation to attendance frequency issues every year. So just to recap, you're going to lose 1 to death, 9 to moving, 7 to transfer growth, and 15 to attendance frequency issues. I think that amounts to 32%. So we'll just say, round it up and just say 1/3.
Yeah. And this type of information needs to be more than database. It needs to be action based. And so you look at these numbers, obviously you're not going to do a lot about number 1, unless you have some kind of health fair. But number 1, death rate is going to be death rate. Moving, probably can't do a lot about that. That's going to happen regardless. But the last two, 22% of your people are going to move to another church within the community, or they're going to attend less frequently. That's an assimilation issue. That is an issue that we could talk about at length. This podcast is only about the numbers. It's not that. But of the 32%, 22%, 22 percentage points is of people that maybe we could have some preventive measures in there so it's not quite as bad. You'll never get those down to 0, but you might start looking at some assimilation issues, which we've talked about at length on many podcasts here. Any last words, Sam?
No, I'll just say, as a pastor, I experienced this. I have a break-even dilemma. We definitely have a lot of new people in our congregation. We're excited about that. But I would say this is pretty typical of my congregation, that we are replacing a third of our people every year. And obviously, if you only replace half of that every year, you are in decline. And I think that's another reason why a lot of churches decline, is they don't replace the people that are leaving, obviously. And it's also a success if you're in a declining community or a tougher church and you're holding your own on attendance. Obviously, you want your church to grow every year, but I'll also say a season of stagnation isn't necessarily bad. You want to break out of that ultimately. But if you're in a tougher place, a tougher geography, a tougher church, just holding your own, sometimes you can count that as success. I wouldn't count it as success for the long term, but you can certainly count it as success for the short term. So there's your break even dilemma and how you have to replace a third of your attendance just to stay even every year.
We will transition from dilemma to opportunity. Pastors, church leaders, listen up, get ready for this information. It is about California Baptist University. Sam and I have both visited there. Sam and I know many of the people there. It's a great school, Christian worldview. Here is the opportunity. You have a sophomore, junior, senior in your congregation or family, or whatever. You can take a course at California Baptist. We'll refer to it as CBU. That child, that person can take a pre-college credit, and it's anybody that is really eligible. Third culture kids, homeschool kids, private school kids, public school kids, all of the above. And they have these 8-week sessions in summer, fall, and spring, and they have 2 of them each. So you do the numbers. There's a lot of opportunities there. Their first class is free. So you can have some of your students start getting free college credit, and it will be for a limited time. It's not indefinite that it's free. And here's the kicker. You're able to be in a class with other college students. And even though you don't have to take it in real time, you can come in and out as you like. It is a real college student setting. It's not just you set apart as a high school student. What an opportunity. A lot of students are asking, a lot of leaders are asking, is this transferable to another university? Well, probably, but you need to ask that university if they will accept this type of credit from California Baptist University, if that is the point of curiosity. We think most of them will, but this is a great opportunity to start right now at a university with a Christian worldview. So we are grateful for California Baptist University in partnership with Church Answers. And we're grateful for you, the listeners and the viewers at YouTube. And we'll continue to talk to you about things that matter at the church at Church Answers and Rainer on Leadership. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just 2. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? And maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.